box is available where you can confirm me that whether you are able to listen me, whether the screen is shareable. Okay, so whatever communication which you guys needs to do it, you should use that chat window to do that. Second important thing, if you have any particular questions, okay, maybe that while discussing regarding this particular course, you might get your answer while discussing it. Sometime, yes, then there would be a possibility that you will not be able to get the answer, but you can park your question and you can put it into the Excel sheet. We will refer that Excel sheet before we close that particular session, and wherever we want to provide the answer on a same day, we will provide you. We will feel that some of the questions and some of the answer you might be getting when we discuss about next classes. So definitely we will definitely discuss into the next classes over there. Okay. Now, very important thing, currently we really don't have any time to check your backgrounds, that where you are actually coming from and how much you knows about the cloud, correct? So I presume that you already have a same level, and I want this particular training to be start with a very basic fundamentals. So whoever already know this some type of cloud-based technology already, okay, they might know this concept, okay, but the people who really don't know, we need to create a complete concrete baseline for those to understand AWS. Now the next thing, I'm going to share my screen. You can just confirm it with the help of your chat box. Whether are you guys able to see my complete screen or not. Okay, so this is a simple screen sharing utility which is available. I hope I'm able to, you guys are able to see my screen. If you are able to see, okay, that's great. Okay, now as Pushpaji told you regarding, there are different type of clouds are available. You can say there is a AWS cloud, there is an Azure cloud, GCP. But let me make it very clear to all of you guys. Once you understand only one cloud techniques or one provider, okay, you can replicate the same technique to other providers. It's exactly the same. Correct? There is no difference in those. Only the terms are different. The way to implementations are different. End of the day, the purpose is same. Okay. So if you understand AWS, I don't think so that it would be difficult to understand Microsoft Azure. It won't be difficult to understand GCP or Oracle Cloud, because all are running at the same level. Only the way to implement it and way to handle it, it's little bit different. But you can understand those things once you start working on it. Now, our complete agenda to understand AWS would be based on case studies. Okay, we are not supposed to show you the standard PPTs which is available in the market and keep talking about, okay, this service can do this. No. The most important part in cloud is white papers. If you go and access any particular cloud-based products, actually, solution architect actually read white papers, case studies. Okay. They need to understand how someone already used the services in order to get the benefit out of it. This is what the major thing as a solution architect can do. Now, as a solution architect, I used to do the same thing. If any customer comes to me and asks me that he wants to migrate his workload from the bare metal to the cloud, he needs a solution. Correct? Now, before I provide the solution, I need to understand the complete business logic which he is using. And based on his business logic, I need to suggest him, okay, what are the services we should use it? What are the services in which region we are supposed to use it? What would be the cost of it? I need to tell him the complete proof of concept. This is how your application is going to work. This is how your entire application would be look like in the cloud. Once he confirmed it, then only we will completely move our entire thing into the production side. So this is the job of the solution architect. This is how any cloud solution architect can do. Now, creating a services, it's very simple. There are a lot of documentations are available. Search it. You will get a complete understanding about that service. It really doesn't matter. Commands, you will get the command line documentation is also available. Those command line documents which we are using, correct? They should be able to understand that particular thing, correct? So that particular thing, you will get it free of cost without any problem, correct? So here, our agenda is to understand the concept behind the services, how we can use that service, how to configure that. Definitely that part will ultimately comes, okay? But what is the purpose of that service and what that service can do for you, in which solution that service can fit. That is our main focus or agenda to learn any cloud services. Now definitely after doing this 3-day course, you would be eligible technically to go for a first level of Amazon certification. We normally called as Amazon Certified Architect Associate course. Okay, so definitely after doing this course, you need to study a little bit more, because there are few more things which is added recently regarding that particular certification. So once you have done it, you would be able to crack that particular thing. But yes, doing the certification is one important part, because that is an accreditation. Doing the job is one important part, because you need to provide the solution. So these are two different aspects to learn the cloud. If you are doing it for certification purpose, that's great, no doubt about it. That will increase the value of your profile, definitely. But if you are doing it for your career perspective, definitely it would be the good idea to go ahead and improve your knowledge and provide that particular ability in your work environment. Now, I don't want to discuss those things. Now, let's jump into the actual topic. Okay. Now, first, before we start talking about any type of services, we need to have some background. Now, I'm not going to tell you something platform as a service. What is the meaning of that? Software as a service. I really don't want that. What is the infrastructure as a service? Because those are common definitions which you can search it on a Google. You will get it. Okay. I will tell you some background how this cloud are actually designed. Okay. What Amazon or what are the other cloud providers are available, how they become a giant actually, what is the technology they have involved in order to make this entire cloud-based situation, correct? Because of those technologies actually make this cloud technique is possible. The very, very important technique which we are talking about is called as hypervisors. Now, maybe some people already knows about hypervisor, okay? Or some people don't know. Don't worry about that. We will discuss about what is hypervisor, and because of this huge development in the hypervisors, we are making these things possible. Second very important component inside your particular cloud-based environment is SDN. Okay, this is nothing but software defined networking. Sometimes some people will also call as the development of overlay networks. We will talk about what is an overlay network or what is an underlay network. Because of this development, we are able to make this particular thing possible. Third, storage techniques. Okay, whatever storage which we are using actually. Okay, the storage, there are different type of file system. Okay, there are different way to handle the objects. Okay, so those all techniques are evolved, and the way they evolved it, these cloud providers take the benefit out of it, and they built their own cloud-based solution. Very, very important component is called as APIs. Okay, these are all APIs. Believe me guys, whatever dashboard you are getting on your screen from any cloud provider, that is just the interface. Whatever you are creating, Okay, those are all API calls which is happening behind the scene. They will carry all your input in a JSON format, okay, and put it into the data center. So these are four major components. Okay, now there are many, but we do have some time limits. So we cannot discuss all the components, but these are four major components which makes this cloud in a working format. Now, what is a hypervisor? Hypervisor is a virtualization technique. Correct? Now, if I talk about a simple example, everybody know the concept or everybody know the well-known company called as VMware. VMware was typically created hypervisors. There is another company called as Citrix. Okay, they also develop their own hypervisor. Now, what is a hypervisor? Technically, if I give you a simple example, let's say I want to run an application. Okay, now to run an application, I require some hardware. Correct? It could be any machine. It could be your laptop also. Correct? But if I'm talking about enterprise level application, if I want to run it, what I required some sort of hardware. Correct? Now this hardware does require some capacity. Okay. Now the person who is suggesting you an application, that particular person or company will suggest you what type of hardware is required to run this particular application. You will see that even if you try to install any Oracle, if you try to install any software, they will give you some guideline that what hardware capacity is required. Similarly, if I want to run any enterprise application, I require the hardware capacity. Plus, there is a concept called as capacity planning. This hardware which I am purchasing, which I am procuring, till how much time I need to keep this hardware for future. Okay, because there is certain limit I need to plan. So for next 10 years, I want this particular hardware to be working. Correct? After that, what I required in a very layman language, I need to install an operating system. That means I need to get a license over here. If by mistake, if you are unmute, can you please mute yourself? Because I'm getting my own echo. Okay. So I require OS license over here. Now, OS license will come into the picture when we talk about Windows-based operating system. Okay. Now people ask me, Red Hat is also licensed. Now that license which Red Hat is taking, that is not for OS license. It is a support charges which they are planning to do it. Correct? So understand very, very precisely. I'm running an application. I install the operating system on the top of it. After that, I need to install some application server on which my particular application could be running. It could be a Tomcat, it could be a WebLogic server, or it could be any particular application server which I can use it. So for example, I said I want to install a Tomcat on my machine. Correct? Now after that, my application would be running on the top of it. Now this is just an application server I'm talking about. Okay. I do require some backend server also to store the database. That is an additional requirement which we are supposed to use it. So you can imagine if I talk about conventional hardware mechanism, okay, I need to have, or you can say I need to purchase multiple type of hardware to run a single applications because my runtime environment is hardware. Now, actually, when this hypervisor comes into the picture, correct? They change the picture of this running application now. Maybe that application which I'm running on this hardware, he's only utilizing 20% of hardware. Only 20% is required to run the application. Correct? But almost 80% of resources which I am having on this particular physical machine, it is completely waste. Why? Because I am dedicated this entire machine to that particular application. Now this was a common problem which we were using long time ago when we are running the application in this particular format. Okay, that means your hardware is underutilized. That's why capacity planning, performance planning, correct? That will take a very, very important task that you need to do it before you purchase any hardware. You need to rectify that how much memory, how much resources your application really required. Based on that, you would purchase the hardware with additional 10 to 20% of capacity. Correct? Now remember that this is a conventional method which we are using. Correct? Now hypervisor changed this approach. Hypervisor, you can simply say it is an operating system to create virtualization. Virtualization means I'm going to create complete set of computing power with virtualized. Virtual CPU, virtual memory, virtual hard disk, everything could be virtualized. However, to run that virtualization machine, I required some physical server. Definitely, I required that. Because end of the day, I'm actually using these resources from some hardware. So what I have done, if I take the same application into the hypervisor format, okay, what I will do it, I will purchase the same machine, but this time rather installing the machine, rather installing the application on the top of the machine, what I do it, logically I will divide this physical hardware into two different hardware now. Okay, so technically I'm dividing this two different I'm spinning two different virtual machine on the top of single physical server. Now both the machines are completely isolated. They do have their own operating system. You need to purchase the licensing for that if you do have a licensing operations or licensing operating system, anything. But here, what is a benefit my hypervisor can give you? Hypervisor will make sure that you should use proper capacity of your hardware now. Okay, whatever capacity which you have it, hypervisor will make sure that whatever number of virtual machine you want to spin up, you can spin, no problem. So this is a proper utilization of your hardware resources. This is how our data centers are working. Now hypervisor will play a very, very important role on the cloud. Why? Because the service called as EC2, instance services, correct? There are many other services who is actually taking the benefit of hypervisor. Technically, Amazon is using the hypervisor called as KVM. Okay? It's a complete open source hypervisor is available, correct? It's a kernel virtual machine. By default, this hypervisor was designed and developed by Red Hat. Okay, but it is a complete open source project. So slowly, every company take the source code of it and they start designing their own compatible hypervisor. Correct? Before that, there is one more hypervisor called as Zen. This is also an Red Hat based, or you can say open source based hypervisor, or you can say this is the best way to virtualize your thing. Zen based hypervisor was there. Amazon was using this particular hypervisor early days. However, recently, few years back, they converted entire their setups into KVM. Now, whatever KVM which is used by your particular Amazon, it is currently proprietary product for Amazon because they have done lot of development on the top of it and complete product they have created. But base is KVM. Okay, if you talk about Microsoft Azure do have their own hypervisor on which they are running their cloud. Correct? So every particular platform which is a cloud-based platform, behind that cloud-based platform, there is hypervisors. Everything. Whatever you're doing actually, now there are different services, we are going to see it, but you can see the hypervisor is the main component. With the help of that, you're going to spin multiple virtual machine through the cloud. You will feel that it is an actual physical machine. No, it's a virtual machine which looks like a physical machine, but it is running on some hypervisor, and you're managing that machine through APIs. That is through dashboard. Correct? So this is a very important component in cloud providers. Okay, now we don't want to jump into a hypervisor too much, but if you can talk about bare metal hypervisor is there, host-based hypervisor is there. The complete virtualization technique is currently we are using. It's completely different. But yes, if you talk about any cloud provider, hypervisor is their main component in their data center. Whatever data center they are running, hypervisor they are using inside the data center to spin the customer's virtual machines. Second very, very important component is called as SDN, software defined networking. Now we know that the networking concepts are very, very important because my data would be moving. Correct? For example, if this is my Apache Tomcat, and for the time being, I would say this is my backend database server which I have. Currently do not consider is hypervisor. Consider that this would be my database server. Correct? Now you can see my application server is continuously talking with database in order to get the data. Correct? Whether it's for modification, whether it's for reading purpose, deleting purpose, all the calls is actually happening over the network. Now, whatever conventional networking mechanism which we are using, correct? That conventional networking mechanisms, they are still there, correct? We are having router, we are having switch, we do have a VPN concentrator, correct? We can build our network with the help of those components. No doubt about it. Correct? But if you look at the cloud perspective, do you have any ability to create your network like the way which we are doing in a conventional network? No. But we are able to create complete network. We can call it as VPC. Virtual Private Cloud. This is nothing but a networking component. If you talk about Microsoft Azure, there is a service called as VNet. Now what is this? These are switches. These are virtual switches which you are going to create. Whatever machine which you are going to spin, he will ask you that which VPC or VNet you want to connect this machine. So technically you are adding your machine to the switch. Now normal switch which you can look like it's a physical device, but here I'm actually doing the same activity through the software. I do have a concept called as security group or NSG, which is a filtering technique, which is nothing but a firewall. I will allow or I will deny any particular request coming to my network. Now that is a job which is done by a device called as firewall. Correct? That is a conventional networking device. Now the same thing could be also be done with the help of security groups. Correct? So you can imagine this is a very, very precise information which we have. Correct? Now you can see, if I give you an example how these things are actually working. Currently, nobody know that how the data center of Amazon looks like. Correct? We don't know because we do not have a permission. For example, I would consider if I went into the Amazon data center, and I will come to know that there are two different server racks are available. Server racks means where you can put your all servers inside. Now there are two different server racks are available. Now inside the server rack, I do have a physical hardware connected. Correct? Now these both the racks are connected with each other with our conventional networking mechanism. Conventional networking mechanism means our switches. Correct? That is our conventional networking component. Now through the dashboard, if I'm creating any virtual EC2 instance, for some time you can imagine that EC2 instance is running on this physical rack. Currently we don't know the scheduling mechanism. Okay, we will see. There are a concept of placement groups, but currently we can see this particular machine is spinning on this hardware. Now I said I want to create one more physical machine for database. Correct? And whatever database machine which I am running, it is running on a different hardware. Okay, now this is a background. For you, both are in the same VPC. Both machines do have its own set of IP addresses. Correct? They are able to talk with each other because you are doing the ping. But technically in the data center of Amazon, both the machines are technically running on two different hardwares which are connected by a switch. But you won't be able to feel that. You feel that they are in my same VPC. They are in my same network. But look at the background. Amazon is handling both the virtual machine which is separately running on two different hardwares. But they are able to communicate each other. Now the communication would be done over this physical network, correct? But do you feel anything? No, you only feel it is in the same VPC. You don't bother about in which hardware they are running. My communication is happening. My data is fetched by my application server. That's it. Now this is a magic of overlay or software defined networking component. I can create anything, whatever networking device you required it, I can literally create that device virtually. Now whatever network which we are using to connect these physical boxes, we will always call that network as a underlay network. What we can call it as underlay. And whatever network which we are using through the VPC, okay, through VNet or any other virtualized networking concept, okay, there is a concept called as Open vSwitch. Correct? Those all component could be considered as overlay network. Correct? You can see because of the software defined networking development, I make this particular thing possible. Otherwise, it is technically not possible. So understand, my base of my entire cloud would be hypervisor because hypervisor give me the complete ability to spin the machines. Second important component for me is, okay, whatever networking which I required to run and communicate to that particular machine, I do have everything available in my hand. Now customer is handling VPC. Customer do not able to handle the underlay network and overlay network controlled by Amazon. Customer can only handle the logical VPC over there because that is the only component they are giving you. But how they are going to manage the traffic, data traffic generated by your machines, it would be controlled by Amazon, and because of that they are using SDN based techniques. So this is a very important component. Third, it's very important because your machines do not contain your data. Okay, whatever virtual machine you are actually running, the root volume on which your operating systems are actually stored, that is something coming from storage. Now, storage is a very important component inside the cloud because I am going to store the data of my customers. Correct? Customer is running his RDS instance. Customer is using S3 bucket. Customer is using EBS volumes. So end of the day, customer is taking the service from you and he want the data persistency to be maintained. So because of this storage replication techniques, we would be able to achieve these things. Now you can see there are few services on the top of the cloud where you do not need to maintain the redundancy. Amazon by itself maintain the redundancy, and one of the services called a storage. Okay, your storage would be actually replicated across the data centers. Across the data centers, it is replicated. Now you are not supposed to do anything. Amazon itself will maintain that there should be 3 copies of the data should be available across the data center. If any given point of a time my entire data center gone bad, I do have alternate data center is available who can make these things possible. Correct? So understand storage, access methods of the storage. Correct? The way to write the information on the storage, huge development has been done. Currently, whatever storage techniques which we are using, those are majorly act like an object-based storage. Correct? Then we do have a volume-based storage. Whatever you can name it, that type of file systems which we have. Correct? Online BCV are available. BCV stand for business continuity volumes. Okay, if one of the data center which is running in Mumbai and another data center is running in Hyderabad, my storage techniques are so much intelligent and powerful right now. I can replicate the complete storage to storage across the data centers. Correct, with a very high speed data rates. If entire Mumbai goes down, I do have customer data available in Hyderabad data center. Correct? So this is a complete implementation which we have it. And not last but not the least, API. Whatever you're handling right now on the cloud, it is actually the API calls. RESTful APIs, which is actually taking your HTTPS request, get and set request, along with the JSON key value pair data. And with the help of this technique, I am actually handling each and every component. Imagine customer will get only a dashboard. Customer do not have a direct access to my data center. Customer do not have the direct access to my server. He won't be able to see which hypervisor I am using. He won't be able to see anything, but still he is able to create the objects. He is able to use the service. He is able to send the data through that service. Correct? So API calls will do the magic for you. So whenever I want to create any object on the top of the cloud, I am actually doing the API calls. Okay. Now you can see every time it is asking you to create a region. Okay. Create a region. Okay. Or you can specify the region where you want that service to be enabled. Correct. Now what is that region's logic actually? Now region is a conceptual logic where my data centers are spread across. We will talk about that shortly. But whenever you create an object in that region means you're actually talking to that API server which is made for that region. So whatever request which you are initiated, it will take that API call, and that API call will go to that center where that API server is running. Correct? If I say I want to create an EC2 instance to the Mumbai location, okay, So by default, we do have a region selected. That is by default. But sometime, let's say my region is selected as US. Now I want to create an EC2 instance on Mumbai. So what I will do it, I will change my region to Mumbai. So ultimately what I'm actually doing, whatever request I'm generating, I'm trying to contact with Mumbai data center where he can take my API calls, and on the behalf of that, he will create a object for me. So huge development in API sections is happened. Tremendous development. Many companies are providing their products on the cloud. You can say currently Azure Cloud and Oracle Cloud, we can integrate it together with variety of the services. Correct? Amazon is also trying to do the same thing. Why? Because of API calls. So there is a tremendous amount of API development has been done, and because of that, we make these things possible. So you can take any example of cloud. These four concepts would be implemented. All the cloud providers do have these four techniques mandatory. Now, every cloud provider do have a different way to implement, different way to design and develop, but these four components should be there. Maybe Amazon is using some NetApp filer as a storage. Maybe Google is using some other storage. Google is using Gluster file system. Maybe Amazon is using XFS. Correct? But more or less, they are same. The way to implement it, it's different. Correct? So this is a basic concept you need to understand. I don't want you to jump into the hypervisor. I don't want to jump into the SDN. But how this magic has happened, because such techniques are already designed and developed. You can imagine this technique we are using in our own data centers also. When the cloud was not there, we are actually trying to achieve the same thing, which we can call it as bare metal services. We are using this. What Amazon has done, he took the advantage of these services and start selling to customers. What he's saying, do not run the entire hardware in your premises. I will take that responsibility on me. You just provide your application on the top of my server and start using it. This is how the cloud is doing the marketing. Correct? So understand, these are the four most important concepts, techniques, technologies are evolved, and because of that, clouds are survived. Correct? Now, how to take the approach, or how we can understand the cloud, how we can start it. Now remember, as a solution architect, okay, if someone comes to you and asks you, look, this is my application which I want to run on the cloud. That means you are actually migrating your workload from normal bare metal machine into the cloud-based providers. Now remember that there are various approaches to do that. Now let's understand these approaches while taking one case study. So what I can say, I'm handling some logistic client. Now he is a logistic client. He's having a very good application which he already purchased, and he was running that application almost more than 10 to 15 years without any problem. Correct? So you can see he do have a tremendous amount of data, because my logistic application, it's a combination of 4 different type of applications. Actually, it contains warehouse management. Okay, it contains HR and payroll also. Okay, it contains transport management. Okay, and it also have the concept of supply chain management. So this is a complete set of application which he already purchased. He do have its own small data center which he rented out from some company, and he is running servers on the top of that data center. So he got his own server, but he do not have a place where he can put that servers. So he rented out space from some organization where they will allow to keep the servers in a data center environment. So it was a data center where commonly used, which you can get it on a rental basis. So he purchased a rack, entire rack from that company. He is almost using 30 servers at this moment of time. Okay, 30 servers he is using. Okay, now he told me to migrate this entire thing to the cloud. Okay, now this is a migration. Now whatever I am running right now, currently it is an in-premise solution. Right now my client said, I really don't have that much ability or investment that I should maintain all entire this particular stack. I just want one-time investment so I can migrate this entire application into the cloud-based service. Then what should be our approach? Okay, the very simplest thing is, remember that I can either have two options. Okay, not PaaS. The first choice would be software as a service. In software as a service, I will tell you what is the limitations. Now, software as a service, everybody know that you really don't require anything. You simply required some licensing for your, or not licensing, you can say subscription. You really required a subscription, correct? Now that particular subscription which we are using, okay, and that subscription would be available, okay, for your entire application which you are running, correct? Now remember that this subscription which you have purchased, for example, Oracle is going to provide you the complete software. He said, don't worry about your servers. We will provide you the server, hardware, networking. You can take the subscription from us. Okay, whatever subscription which I have it, you can take it from us and you can use it. Now here is the challenge. If I'm using software as a service, I am running my business from 10 years. So I do have some data generated already. Correct? Now remember that I already have the data available, and if I try to change my application right now, it doesn't make sense. But yes, software as a service do have an ability in certain cases where if your provider, the company who gave you this application, if they said, why you're using this, rather using my application on bare metal, I will provide that as a service also. Then it's okay. Then he would be able to migrate the complete set of database to the cloud. But in case of software as a service, completely different vendor, it would be difficult. So my software as a service solution won't work in this scenario. Then what is the cheapest option which I can do it? Okay, definitely. Here, what I can do it, there is a concept called as lift and shift in migrations. Okay, now lift and shift is a concept where everyone or whatever resources which we required, correct? Now that particular request means whatever infrastructure which you have it, you can only lift it from the bare metal and shift it to your cloud. It is called as lift and shift migration. Now here I know that my application which I'm using, it really does not have any ability to run it on software as a service or an application level. Correct? Now, if you have using this type of methodology, lift and shift, what I required complete set of infrastructure, that is infrastructure as a service. So here, if my customer say, I want to migrate my all 30 servers into the cloud, then I'm supposed to provide him. SaaS is not the solution which can compatible, because that SaaS solution won't happen because your data is not compatible with that. I cannot be able to migrate your data. If you want to start from the scratch once again and you want to wipe out all your data actually, then it's possible. Otherwise, you need to go to the same vendor and check whether that vendor is able to provide you software as a service, and whether he is able to migrate your data, then you can go for a SaaS. Otherwise, technically that is not the solution. Correct? Then the next solution I will suggest him, lift and shift. I will say whatever currently you are running right now, I will make sure that I will create the same servers on the top of cloud under the category called as infrastructure as a service. So identify a proper service which I can use to provide the solution. Now, infrastructure as a service means I am actually talking about EC2 instance service. Now, whenever I'm talking about EC2 instance, he will not come alone. Okay, he will also come alone. He will also come with VPC. Okay, because this is a dependent services. So once I identify a first service, which is my main service where my entire server is going to run it, then I need to find out what are the additional services which are either a mandatory and optional services. I can use it with the help of EC2 instance. So remember that whenever you are providing any solutions to the customer, check what are the first level services which you are going to use it. This should be the approach. Second important approach, once you identified all the services, maybe that I am using RDS. Okay. Now RDS will provide you the ability to store your data. Or customer say, no, I do have my own Oracle license available. Can I use it? Yes, once again, my service would be EC2. Now Oracle is now available in the form of EC2 as well. I can use it. Correct? So definitely based on this requirement, I would rather say you can go for RDS, because RDS will help you to migrate your data. We will be able to migrate because here we do have an Oracle instance available. And if you are already using Oracle database on bare metal, you can migrate this information quite clearly. Amazon will give you the guideline that how to migrate it. But if you feel that no, I want to use my own Oracle database server, you do have a choice. Correct? Now here one more question you are going to ask him. Do you want Oracle to install on EC2 instance, or do you want Oracle to be installed on in-premises? Now some customer who is having the critical form of data, they don't want their database to be running on the cloud. They always preferred to run the database instance on their in-premises. Now here it is an example of hybrid computing now, or hybrid cloud implementation. That means whatever data centers which you have it, you are trying to connect that data center with the cloud network right now. There are multiple services are available who can make this possible. Express Route is a service, Direct Connect is a service. VPN tunneling service where I can connect my cloud data center with my in-premises data center. That is a solution. But customers say, I do not want anything. So I will suggest him that RDS is the best option for you. And this relational database service, which is available on the Amazon, whatever data which you have generated from last 15 years, we would be able to migrate it because we do have Oracle database running over there. Correct? So if you want to keep the same database, you already have the licensing for it. We can try to use the same licensing mechanism over there, and we will make sure that it should be up and running. So identifying the service is a very important concept when we talk about solution architect. Now, once you identify these services, the next thing is to decide where you are going to deploy these services. Okay.
Yeah, I'm Mangesh. I have a question. Right. Mangesh, from Express Route, you mean to say database will be on our server only, or it will be moved to cloud?
No. Express is a type of connectivity service. Okay. Database would be available in your data center only on your physical machines. Express route service will only make sure that whatever available from your data center, it should be connected to the cloud-based application. So it's a dedicated line they will provide you from the nearest data center from the cloud provider to your data center. Correct? You can say the Express route is a service which is available in Microsoft Azure. So if you see that you are sitting in a Bangalore, and if there is a data center near to Bangalore, so if you are purchased that Express route service, what they will say, I will give you the complete connectivity from the optical fiber directly from your data center to my data center where your applications are running. Now, they just want data to become to their data center. How the applications are running, they will take care of it. Okay, they need to make sure that the connectivity should be done between the Microsoft Azure data center and your data center, and that service is called as Express route. So definitely your database should be running in your data center. Correct? Now,
okay.
Remember that this is a hybrid implementation. Now this is very popular nowadays. Now some banking companies, they do not want to keep their data on the cloud. Insurance company, they cannot do that. Now there is a specific reason behind it because there is a compliance. We will talk about that, but banking compliance says that you are not supposed to put your entire financial data into someone else's data center as per the rule. Then what is the solution? That bank cannot use the cloud? Yes, bank are using the cloud. The way the banking is using the cloud is different. They are only putting the services, which is a non-crucial services, on the top of the cloud. But whatever critical services plus database they want to keep it, they will keep all the things in their own in-premises solution. And they connect their own data center to the cloud with the help of either Express route, either with the help of VPN Connect. Okay, there are multiple solutions are available. They are doing this. Correct? Now this is where actually we need to consider as a solution architect, we need to consider that what type of implementation is required. Now I cannot simply suggest that, oh, you can use Express route. No, I cannot do that. Because if you look at the cost of Express route, it is very, very huge. Okay, whatever conventional networking which we are using, and if you compare with the Express route service, it's very, very expensive. People cannot afford it. Then is there any cheapest solution is available? Yes. I can use my own internet, which is a public internet, to connect to the cloud. We can create a VPN tunnel between my data center to the cloud, which is the cheapest solution which is available. My data would be secured, no doubt about it. Plus, my cloud and my data center, they are connected together. The only challenge would be there would be a small latency because of the high level of the encryption. A very minute latency, and if your application does not require that latency, then yes, you need to go for some dedicated solution like an express route or direct connect kind of a service. But other than that, till my experience is concerned, there are very rarest cases which I have seen where people are using such expensive solutions. But yes, such solutions are provided. Okay. Now, if I take this case study and if I say I identified the services, now where we are going to deploy the services. Now here you should understand the AWS global infrastructure. Now here we are going to talk about specifically AWS. Now customer comes to me, I identify the services. Now remember that before you identify the services, you need to identify the services which you are using. Same equivalent services you need to identify for some other cloud service providers also. Compare the cost. Who can give you the best cost? Who can give you the best reliability? Okay. Based on that, you will choose your cloud service provider. Correct. So if I selected Amazon would be my cloud service provider. Now before I decide where should I launch this all the services, you should know the concept of AWS global infrastructure. How and where AWS is available. We should know that because there is a parameter called as proximity. Okay. This parameter needs to be considered first. If my client is sitting in Singapore and if I deploy the services in US, will it work? Technically, yes. But he is sitting in Singapore and he is accessing the service from US. So definitely it's a latency because all these servers are connected together globally. Correct? But here we need to understand the complete set of AWS global infrastructure, as well as we need to understand what are the different type of regions, availability zones are available from the AWS. So based on that information, I will decide where I can put my all the services. So if you look at, okay, this is my dashboard, you would be able to see okay. Now this would be some sort of regional maps they are giving you. Okay. Now you can see there are 24 regions are launched. Regions are nothing but physical locations. Okay. 80 availability zones, 5 local zone, 13 wavelength zone, 5 new announced regions. Correct. So there are complete set of infrastructure related information would be available over here. Okay. So this is what you need to understand, where these regions are available. Regions means a specific set of data centers or availability zones are available in that area. Now if I'm talking about Singapore, I should be able to see, okay, with the help of this global, I should go to the concept of regions and availability zone. We will discuss that. First, I need to find out a region. Correct? So there are 4 major regions. They are divided. Under North America, you can see there are multiple regions are available. Okay, you can say there is a Ohio region, US West region, Oregon region. Okay, these are the different regions are available. Region is nothing but a physical location where multiple availability zones are available. Okay, so you can see there are multiple regions are available. Okay, now according to this mapping key, you will see the region would be denoted like this and edge location would be denoted like a dot sign. Now, what is a region and edge location? We will discuss this once we identify the region first. Okay, so here you can say in US there are multiple regions are available. US West region is there. Say this is second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Okay, now there would be more region would be upcoming into Canada also. So whatever new regions is available, they are keep providing all the main region information. Now I'm looking for Asia Pacific. Now if you look at the Asia Pacific, okay, there is a region is called as mainland China. It should be in Sydney, it should be in Tokyo, one is in Mumbai, second one is Seoul, and in Hong Kong there is in Singapore. So I do have a region specified in a Singapore region. That means within Singapore itself, I do have region defined by Amazon. Now, proximity is a very important parameter. So if region is available within the nearest part, you can see I will always prefer that region to deploy the services. This is my first condition. Remember that. First, identify the services. Second step, go to the AWS global infrastructure mapping. Find out, is there any nearest region is available? Why? Because if it is near to me, I would able to deploy all the possible services nearest region, so the latency would be less. Obviously, if I am in the Singapore, I will prefer to go into the Singapore as per the latency parameter. But there is one more beautiful thing is available, that is called as compliance. The second parameter we need to check, it's compliance. What is the compliance for your applications, or is there any government rule, regulations are available for the application you are using? For example, now I'm talking about a private application where my customer do not require anything to be running on my bare metal. He want everything to be migrated. So I decided the Singapore location is there. So I would be able to deploy everything into the Singapore as per the proximity parameter. But sometime, if by chance there was no region decided in Singapore and there is a region decided in China, so nearest location would be either Tokyo or China, but my government compliance said, no, you are not supposed to put your data to some other country's data center. This could be a rule. You can check, there is a rule or there is some compliance for each and every government. For example, China, you can talk about it. You can talk about Japan. You talk about Germany, some European countries actually. Correct? Now, why Amazon is increasing their number of regions slowly? You can see Microsoft has done a phenomenally huge number of regions are available with one availability zone, because they want to cover as much ground as they can as per the compliance rule. Now, German compliance rule says, if anybody want to use any application onto the cloud-based services, and if that particular application do have some related with in a government sector or semi-government sector, military sector, or something related to that, or it's a vendor of it, and that vendor want to put the entire application onto the cloud, the by default rule would be the data which is available for that application would be available in their country only. They do not want that service to be enabled on some other data center. That is a rule. Correct? So there is a compliance is another factor which I need to decide first before I need to find out where I should deploy it. Singapore is there, but if it was not there, then I can run my application into India data center, that's fine. But my compliance said, no, you're not supposed to keep the data to some other's country's data center. It is not technically possible. Believe me, Chinese government do have certain rules. They allow Microsoft to run their data center inside China, Beijing. Even Amazon also doing that. However, the company who is maintaining that data center, that is a Chinese company. They won't allow to maintain the data center by some other Amazon itself. So Amazon employees are there, but there is a contract between the Chinese company and Amazon. The entire data center of the Amazon would be controlled and managed by that third party company. Compliance. Correct? So this is very important factor. Third important thing is service availability. Whether that service is available in that region or not. Correct? If you have decided everything and if that service is not available, then what you can do it? Okay? So if you look at to AWS regional services, okay, these are the service list you are getting over here. If I say I want to check in Mumbai, what are the services which are available over there? So I would simply go to the Mumbai data center, which is in Asia Pacific. If I choose the Mumbai as a data center, I will come to know that within this Mumbai data center, these are the services offered, which is available. That means I can run these services into Mumbai data center. Correct? So understand this global infrastructure information is provided to the customer. The reason behind it, that you should be able to understand what is the region. Region is just a physical location where Amazon do have their data centers are available. So proximity is the parameter that every architect needs to be considered. Second thing, as per the compliance rule, you should be able to understand how these compliance rules would be available. Third thing, the specific service is available over there or not. Okay, because this particular services which I am available, for example, there is a service which is not available to the Singapore region, and I decided that service to be run. Now, if that service is not available to the Singapore region, then definitely I need to take that service from some other data center. Correct? Now, as per the rule, as per the compliance, is it really beneficial or not? Or would you like to replace that service with some other services or other solution is available or not? That I need to take care of it. So here, my AWS Global Infrastructure information would help me to identify these resources. Correct? So let's understand a very, very important concept behind it. It's called as availability zones. Correct? Now, what is the availability zone in AWS Global Infrastructure? Correct? Remember that region is nothing but a physical location. Now, if you look at this information carefully, okay, you can see there is a additional information is provided over here. Availability zone 3. Mumbai is having 3 availability zones. Correct? So every region, Amazon is trying to increase the availability zone. Okay, now what is this availability zone? Okay, understand, availability zone, it's nothing but a different data centers which is isolated from each other. So if I take and consider Mumbai is one of the region, so I said I do have a region called as Mumbai. Okay, now this is a region specific. I decided Mumbai is my region. Now in the Mumbai, as per my definition, 3 availability zones are available. So that means I do have 3 different data centers are available. Now within that data center, how many clusters are available? I don't know. Maybe thousands, maybe more than that. But I would say in Mumbai region, I do have 3 different availability zone. We can call it as AZ. There are 3 different availability zones are available. There are 3 different physical location which is completely isolated from each other. They do have a dedicated physical lines. They are connected with each other. Correct? Now within this, that is a group of data center. Now this is a complete data center. Now how inside this data center, how many servers, everything, it is completely depend on Amazon how they design it internally. But I would say in Mumbai region, I do have 3 availability zone, sometimes 4. That means 4 different data centers available. Correct? Now the reason behind it, if one of my availability zone gone bad, that region should not get impacted. I should have another availability zone within that region who can take over. Now here our replication needs to be maintained. Now here the solution architect should be design the complete solution such a way that I should create and maintain the replication over here. Now as I told you, some replication needs to be managed by a particular administrator or a solution architect. Correct? Some replication would be controlled by Amazon by itself internally throughout its entire application is running. So we don't need to bother about it. But some replication needs to be controlled by architect. If I say I want to run some of the application in only one availability zone, only one, and by mistake that availability zone gone bad because of the electric power failure, because of the natural calamities or something, what will happen? Obviously you won't be able to access your service. Correct? So there are some services which is specific to AZ. For example, EC2. It is specific to availability zone. Some services are region specific. It is running on every region, everywhere on this availability zones. Some services are global. Some services regions are global. For example, load balancing service, it is regional service. Why it is regional? Why it is cannot specific like an AZ basis? Simple. If I do have that service allocated to only a specific availability zone, and if that availability zone gone bad, then my load balancer is gone, plus my EC2 instance is also gone, because both services are availability zone specific. But that is not the case. Amazon is very smart. He said they categorize some services which would be applicable to availability zone. They categorize some services which is available to regional specific. They categorize some services which is available to the global specific. Correct? So understand, a region, it's a simple physical location where Amazon do have multiple availability zones. Availability zone is a center where multiple data centers are available. Maybe inside one availability zone, I do have a cluster of multiple data centers. I don't know. But I will call that entire logical center would be called as my first availability zone. Now remember, there is a specific rules are available. This every availability zones, they do have almost 100 or 70 kilometers away from each other. Now there is some standards they are maintaining. They do have a dedicated lines. Okay, they are connected with each other. Okay, now this entire region do have 3 availability zone. All the availability zone we can call it as AZ. All AZs are dedicatedly connected with optical fiber lines, which is a very high speed network. They are connected privately. They are not going through the internet at all. Remember that it is a private connection they are maintaining between these AZs. Correct? This is a very high speed lines they are maintaining, completely isolated from each other. Complete different power sources are available. Whatever resources they want to run that availability zone, it's completely isolated from each other. So definitely they do have to maintain redundancies based on every data center which they are running through. They are maintaining a separate redundancy level for each availability zone separately. Remember guys, this is a very fantastic solution which Amazon is actually providing. If you compare it with Microsoft Azure do have more than 50 regions they have running. But if you look at all the regions of the Microsoft do have only one availability zone in most of the regions which they declared it. But Amazon is growing slowly, but they are growing the region in a such a way that every region they do have at least minimum 2 availability zone. That means 2 different data centers. Correct? So they are also doing that particular activity also. Now if you remember this major diagrams which is available in your global infrastructure carefully, most of the region which they picked, if you can check in Asia specific, if you can check in Middle East or Europe, African side, if you look at in South America and look at the North America, you can carefully check most of the region they have selected which is near to the sea area. Okay, where you are getting the sea connectivity. Correct? Now remember that there is a specific region or specific reason behind it, because these all regions are also connected with each other. Correct? They are not just connected to different AZs, even they do have all the regions are also connected with each other. This is a very important point. Now we do have optical fiber running behind to provide the internet connectivity. Same way, all these regions which are spread across the globe, Amazon make the provision to connect all these regions together also. Correct? So understand, whenever I am providing any solution to any particular customer, understand the complete global infrastructure of Amazon properly. What are the region, what are the availability zones are available. Then whatever solution which I am providing, it should be scalable. It should be highly available. Correct? Now, how I can make it highly available? If I do have multiple availability zone in that region, if I do not have multiple availability zone, I cannot provide you any highly available solution over there. Correct? So this is where Amazon global infrastructure help me to provide the solution. Correct? Now there is a concept called as edge locations. You can see some of the blue dots which we can get it. Okay? In this diagram, there are blue dots, and they said these blue dots are edge locations. Okay, now these edge locations, or sometime it's a customer endpoint location, correct, which we are using to access certain services globally. For example, if I running any particular type of server in US, okay, so you can say my web server is in US, okay, I do have a web server running over here, okay, and currently this entire deployment of the web server which we are using is on the top of that region. But you can see when the person who is sitting in the Mumbai region, nearest to the Mumbai region, he's trying to access that web server. So definitely from Mumbai to US, he's actually trying to get the data out of it. Correct? So definitely there might be small latency would be available. Now in certain scenarios, what I can do it, I will access the same web server service through the edge locations. Okay, so you can say it is a cloud front. There is a service called as content delivery network. So what I can do it, I do have an edge location in Mumbai. So what I will do it, I will keep the copy of this particular web server to that edge location. So the data which I want to send it to the client, which is nearest to the Mumbai location, rather I am sending that request to that particular original server. I can give the request response from Mumbai edge location only. But not all the services are compatible to provide the edge location. There are only few services which you can use it or which you can implement it with the help of edge locations. Edge location, you can say it's a cache service. Okay. Microsoft is also providing the same thing. Azure is also providing the same thing, that rather going to the specific original server which is located in US, why you are going to do that? You simply use the same service running on the edge location right from here. Correct? So this is a very fantastic approach they are coming with. So there are multiple edge location. The CDN technique, okay, content delivery network technique, they all are using edge locations where people can immediately access those services. Correct? So understand, this is one more very important point in a global infrastructure, edge locations. Correct? Edge location will create a very good impact on it. So if I'm providing the solution, these are the points I need to study. Okay, every solution architect need to understand what are the regions are available, what is the availability zones are available, what services are running in that particular regions. Correct? Now, if I'm providing those particular services, you need to identify which services are availability zone specific, which services are regional specific, which services are global specific. Correct? If you understand these very important precise terms, you should be able to understand how to design the solution. Currently, I am saying designing the solution. Correct? Still, we have not implemented it. Still, we are not considering the cost part of it at this moment of time. We are only trying to find out how we are actually building the complete solution on the top of the cloud. Correct? So I hope it is clear to all of you that what is exactly the Amazon global infrastructure. Okay. Now you can see, remember that anything. Okay. Yes, Sachin is asking me, can we change the replication factor? Yes, Sachin. In certain cases, we do have ability to change the replication factor, means whatever services do you feel which the replication is in your hand, correct? You can change it. Now, whatever services which is not in your hand, for example, storage replication would be available in your hand also. Storage replication is also available from a Amazon perspective also. You can change these parameters. Okay. After that, it is something which we are going to see it. Remember that whenever we are talking about replication, we will discuss that. Don't worry. When we talk about EBS into the next class, actually, we will definitely precisely talk about what are the replication methods, how we can use it. Correct? But currently, whatever case study we took it is simply this one, that I want to go for lift and shift. Okay. And I need to make sure that what is the best global infrastructure I have. So read that particular global infrastructure document carefully. Okay. I gave you the idea that how you can design it. But other than that, cost is very important factor. Okay. Customer should afford the solution. Otherwise, the service is available over there. You cannot just provide the service to the customer. No. Another factor to design the solution is cost. Remember that. Cost, because in the lift and shift, the cost will make a huge difference. Correct? Now the customer which we are handling right now, he said, I need to pay for a rent, I need to pay for internet connectivity, I need to pay for a person, okay, who is managing the database, I need to pay for that vendor who is providing that software, correct? And the cost is very heavy, I cannot afford it. Licensing, he need to do it every year actually, correct? So definitely, so the cost is another factor you need to consider when you design the solution. Now people ask me that how you can define the cost. Okay, simple. Amazon give you the beautiful solution. Amazon calculator. Correct? So if you go, I will tell you one more calculator is also available. Okay. Now Amazon also provide a beautiful solution which will give you the complete set of estimate. I can create an estimate. Complete set of estimate I can create over here. Correct? Which is a complete idea they will give you. You can ask the service what service you want to use it. Okay? This is an Amazon EC2. You need to check for this service because that is the appropriate solution which we can use it. So you have to give the proper information in which region you want that service to be running. For example, I want to use this particular service to be running on US Ohio. That's fine. Okay. And I want a Linux instance. I need 4 virtual CPU. Memory should be 16 GB. Okay. This is the instance type. If I would like to go ahead and do it, I'm just giving you the idea. Quantity is 1. Now reservation. No, I don't want reservation to be there. I want on demand. Okay. Now you can see there are certain changes if you do it. Now this is a 30 GB hard disk. You can see total monthly cost would be 1001 USD. Okay, what is the configuration of the machine? 30 GB hard disk I am getting, which is SSD, which is a solid state disk. Okay, which is an EBS volume. Remember that. A lot of people confuse. EBS volume is nothing but your local hard disk where your operating system would installed. You can say like that. Okay, this is not additional storage. Additional storage, you're supposed to add it. So that will create one more additional cost. Okay, but currently we are not calculating it. And this is what is the pricing strategy I'm choosing. I'm choosing on-demand service. Okay, wherever I required, I will run it. Whenever I require to stop it, I will stop it. This is an on-demand service. Correct? Now, if you look at the price over here, it is 101 USD per month. Okay. Now, remember one more interesting fact. Now, I have selected the region over here that was Ohio. Okay. East Ohio. Now, if I go to some other region over here, which is, for example, South America, Sao Paulo. Okay. Okay. I change the region only. Rest of the configuration, I have keep it like that. Okay. What is the cost? 162. Okay. Now why it is like that? Remember, this Amazon working on a concept like of supply and demand methodology. Okay. Where the demand is more. Okay. There you will get a least prices. Where your demand is less, you will get a high prices. So these prices or cost when you're calculating, because your customer is going to ask you, okay, tell me the cost. Okay. Now the cost which I'm telling you, it is based on the region. That's why region you have to specify properly, because it work on demand and supply chain concept. In San Paulo, South America, the demand is less. That's why price is high. In Ohio, demand is very high. That's why price is low. Okay. And if I check some more location, for example, we will check in Singapore. Okay, we will see Asia Pacific. Once again, price is changing. Correct? Now, this is completely based on demand and supply chain. Correct? So, be careful. Whenever you are providing the proper estimate to the customer, you have to take each and every parameter. One more interesting fact. I will go here. Okay, I'm choosing on-demand instances. Okay. Now, on-demand instances means at the time of demand, I am going to launch it, and at the moment, if I want, I can stop it. Correct? The price which I am giving you right now, it is the price of your on-demand method. Correct? Now, if I talk about EC2 instance saving plan, okay. Now, if you're telling Amazon that I should be able to take this particular hardware for 3 years with all amount would be upfront. Okay. I will provide all the amounts in upfront to you. Correct? Now you can look at the price. Okay. This is the cost of 3 years they are talking about. Okay. So imagine, okay, total upfront amount which I am paying to Amazon is $1,647 for 3 years, because here everything would be available as a priority. Correct? So remember that I'm telling this Amazon, I'm doing commitment with the Amazon that I should run this instance for next 3 years, and plus I'm giving you all the money in the upfront. Correct? So you can see the cost is different. Okay, now if I change certain parameters over here, I would say no upfront 3 years, we will see the parameter is change. Now you can say, I will not provide you any upfront. Okay. I will provide you the monthly payment. The only reservation I can do it, I will do the commitment that I will use this particular server for next 3 years. This would be the cost. Correct? So understand, based on your commitment, based on your requirement, if you change the pricing strategy, the cost would also get deferred. Okay, now there is a convertible instance, standard reserve instance is there, compute service plan is there, correct? All these type of plans are available, but on demand service is something which is very, very higher cost. 127.4, it's a monthly cost which you are getting, because here it is on demand, you said, correct? It is based on the demand which you want to run that instance. There would be no commitment. There would be nothing. You might be running that server for some time. You might be closing it. So there would be no commitment as a client. So the charges for on-demand services would be higher. Now we will see what are the different type of methods are available. Okay. What is the different reservation types are available? Standard reservation type, regional reservation type, convertible reservation types are available. Based on that, the price would be differed. Correct? So this is a calculator. There is one more interesting calculator which I got it over the internet. Okay, EC2. Okay. This is a simple EC2 and RDS calculator. Okay. He is also providing, this is a third party utility, correct? But actually the prices which he is actually taking from Amazon. So this is only for testing purpose. If you want to do it, you can always use this pricing utility. However, if you are providing it to the customer, this is the best tool to find it out. Correct? This is very, very important. Now I'm only talking about a compute price because this is what my solution is going to implement it. Okay. The prices for your, what you can say, RDS is different. Correct. The prices for static IPs are different. Correct. So there are different services, different calculations you are supposed to do it, and then you have to create a consolidated report and then you can use it. Correct? So cost is one of the important parameter which I need to fulfill whenever I am providing to the solution. Correct? Now what we can do it, we will take a small break of 10 minutes right now, and once we will come back, then we will discuss about how we can log into the Amazon console, what is a different type of accounts which we can create it, and how we can use the free account benefit, and what is the benefit of the paid account solution if I convert it. Correct? So let's take a break of 10 minutes, and once we will come back, we will discuss that particular part. Okay?